Welcome to the Inspired Conversations podcast, hosted by me, Andrea Cova-Bernal. As a college counselor, I'm inspired not only by the incredible students I work with, but also by remarkable change makers in higher education, each with powerful stories of their own. Through storytelling and shared narratives, I believe in the power of connection. Join me as we delve into dialogue and share valuable advice for college success. Welcome to the Inspired Conversations podcast. I'm so excited today. Not only is the sun out, but there's so much going on in Southern California here. But I also have a really awesome special guest today, Kenny Lopez. This has been a long time coming, Kenny. It's been a while since we've just sort of known each other and talked over the phone, but this is now finally an opportunity for us to connect and talk a little bit about why we're here and why we do the work that we do. So thank you so much for being here. How are you, Kenny? How was your day?
I'm doing well, doing super well. I just got home from work trying to rush over here, and we had some always the technology is not working when we first start off, but once we got settled in, I'm just excited. Been talking for a while, and yeah, finally this is the first time I actually get to see your face. We've just been on the phone, the first couple times that we talked.
Yeah.
But no, I'm super happy to just answer any of the questions and just give any kind of feedback to help inspire the next people forward, and help us all, at least get further than where we're at right now. So I'm all for it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking this time out of your day. Let me just start off by introducing the podcast. Inspired Conversations really was started as a passion project of mine, prompted from a few years ago. I had started a podcast called the College Match Podcast, where I brought students from all over Los Angeles in the center of COVID, everything was happening, to help them share their stories for college applications. They didn't have a space to do that. And I realized how powerful storytelling is, but I also realized that it's people like you, the partners, the admissions officers, financial aid officers, but also folks who work in admissions and in this world who have amazingly powerful stories of your own. And especially in light of sort of the Supreme Court decision now and affirmative action, there's so many changes to be made for students of color. And I want them to know that people like us are out there who got their back, who encourage their voices, and who want them to be heard. And I know your story very much centers around sort of finances. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I think it's also really powerful to share how we know each other. And this brings me to one philosophy that I tell all of my students all the time is how important your network is. Network truly is your net worth, people. And I actually met you through your mom, who I hired as my family photographer. I wanted to bring my family together and do a family photo shoot. And your mom, Julia, shout out to her,
Yes.
immediately told me that we should connect because we're doing similar work. Your work is much more centered around, making sure students are financially set and savvy. And my work is making sure they feel like they have a space in college. And so you immediately reached out and offered free tax services for my family and their students. And so here we are, full circle, I think, coming together and really sharing all of that. So again, how powerful is your network and the people who are in that Rolodex, right?
And I just want to comment on that a little bit too, is that like when my mom first, it's like, it's your mom, and she's like telling me like, hey, I met someone, doing photography. And I'm like, whatever, you don't ever want to reach out. Just like, she's got her own thing going. Like, I'm doing my own thing too. And then, but when she kept reminding me like, hey, like I'm still talking to her. She's like, she's a counselor. Like she's really helping out the students. You really should just have a conversation with it. I'm like, oh, okay. And really I feel like those are the sparks really that help propel you to like get you to a new level of either career or a new opportunity, is when you just make those phone calls. And we called right away, and we're doing the same type of work, trying to help the underserved community, really just help them advance, just because there's not really that well, in my case, for financial literacy, it's not like a common common education to find. It's not easily taught in school. So I just thought I could bring some kind of some kind of knowledge and help to your students. And yeah, we're happy to work with you guys next year too. So excited about that.
planning ahead for all of it. It really makes a huge difference once you have folks in your, on your corner. And so speaking of financial literacy, I think a lot of it, I'll just say to my story, right? I grew up, I think you might know, in New Mexico. And my parents always instilled the power of hard work for me. So I started working when I was 15. The truth is, though, is nobody also sat me down and said, you're getting a paycheck, here's what you should do, right? Here's how you should save. And so working since I was 15, 3, 4 different jobs in high school, I wish I would have known things about investing and, preparing for savings and financial aid, all of that stuff back then. And so we're going to get there. Part of today's conversation is to talk about your experience, but also how that ties into the college experience and why it's so important for students to understand these things so they don't get into debt later on. So that's sort of the full circle of today's conversation. But I want to kick it off to you, Kenny, because you, again, if you guys haven't listened to his podcast, yes, More Than the Numbers, it's amazing. Start with his story. It's super powerful, but I want to give you a platform here to share it. So can you start with where you're from and your childhood, and let's go from there.
Oh man, okay. So yeah, so I'm from Hacienda Heights, California. So that's a little tiny town near West Covina, Whittier. Not many people know about it. San Gabriel Valley 626. You probably know about it near Rolling Heights. But Hacienda Heights is I'd say middle to upper class. We lived on the other side of the freeway, which is like, not as good of a neighborhood. So I grew up with Mexican household. So my mom's from Chihuahua, and we live with my grandparents, my abuelito, my abuelita, and we had a couple tios, cousins, all living in there. So at any point, we had like between maybe 10 to 12, 13 people living in a 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom home. So, but I just thought it was normal. I thought that was the normal way to live. I always, received lots of love from them, and we lived in the garage. So it was my parents and my 2 younger brothers. We had bunk beds, and yeah, I just thought it was normal. But as growing up, you would kind of, because my parents, we grew up in a Catholic household, really religious, and just a lot of money was not a priority for our family. Or really, it was just on based on relationships, love, giving. We're very very giving people, and sometimes we don't put ourselves in the front of the priority list, but and we end up co-signing and lending, and that's kind of what my parents got into with co-signing and all of that. So we had a bunch of debt. We lived paycheck to paycheck, obviously, but we all helped support each other with my grandparents' home. So I grew up kind of, I didn't really understand the concept of debt really, but I just knew that we had some kind of like financial issues where I wasn't able to, we weren't able to go on vacations, or I wasn't able to have the same kind of clothes that my peers had. I was always a little bit embarrassed to have friends come over just because we had so many people. And the school that I went to was actually in a more affluent area. So I did kind of feel the difference there. So that just kind of was my roots of like where I first noticed that, hey, like something's kind of different with the money situation, right? So, growing up, I didn't really have, we didn't really have anyone to kind of teach us, when you're first generation, there's not really a guideline or rules to follow really with finances. If you're not taught from your parents, and if you're not taught from school, like where are you supposed to get this information from, right? So coming out of high school, I knew all I knew was that I didn't want to pay that much in student loans, and I wanted to get a good job. So from there I was a decent student, maybe like 3 point, around the threes in the GPA. And I actually applied to the Cal States, and I got into 5 of the Cal States that I had applied to. So but I didn't know what my major was going to be at the time. So I wanted to spend some time really trying to discover myself, find out what I wanted to do, and do it at a low cost. So again, kind of coming from the you know scarcity mindset, or not really having money, I was looking at just the cost of schooling and really trying to get what's the cheapest option that I can have, right? So I looked at and I did the math between how much I was going to get from the Pell Grant and Cal Grant between the Cal State systems and the community college, and I ended up getting more from the community college system. So that's why, even though I got accepted to Cal State, I went to Rio Hondo College, and that's where I'm a really big proponent for community colleges. I went full on immerse myself. I even before the days of school started, I went and found out about the honors program. I like stayed in the counselor's office. I went to all the job shadow events, all this stuff to try to like, because I was really much motivated. I wanted to go to like a good school and get a scholarship to like UCs or UCLA. So that's kind of what I did. Uh, Going into community college. I don't know if I'm rambling. If I'm rambling too much here, let me know. Cut
No,
me
I've
off.
got my mind is rolling for follow-up questions though. So
But
go.
I promise
Yeah.
it'll make sense. Okay.
Yeah, no,
So
no, go for it.
okay, so I'm at Rio Hondo, and I'm getting great grades, and I'm figuring out that I wanted to become go into the medical field. Actually, I wanted to do physical therapy. So well, just because I like the fact that the physical therapy, the medical field is very stable, very secure, and it's an avenue of where I can explore I like sports, so I get to help do rehabilitation, and there's training involved. I like working out, so I thought it was a perfect fit for my career avenue. So I took a bunch of classes there, and I had some ups and downs at Rio Hondo, but I ended up transferring out of there. Uh, Actually, first I wanted to say too, I used the aid that I got from Rio Hondo to actually pay for my car. So I did that,
Mhm.
and it covered my full tuition as well at Rio Hondo. Again, this is because I stayed in the I went into the honors transfer program, so it was kind of a easy access, and they kind of guided me too. When you're just kind of sticking in the counselor's office, you just hear about all this extra grants and all the different things to apply to. um and that's how I got some extra aid, like I said, to pay for, I'd say, like half of a down payment for my Corolla. I worked on the side as a server for all those years, so making the tips money like just helped me survive. I didn't have to, because I couldn't ask my parents for any money. It was, they would help here and there, but I really was trying to be self-sufficient and do this on my own. So after that, I transferred to Cal State Fullerton, um, and I studied kinesiology. So it was a really good experience there. And comparing the two, I actually liked Rio Hondo a little bit more. I don't know. I thought there was a little bit paid more attention in this community colleges. So for you high school kids out there, it's not a bad option. You just, whatever you put your effort into, I think you're going to get out of it, right? You're going to get out all that you put in. But anyways, I applied to the physical therapy school, and I didn't get in out of Cal State Fullerton. I got on the wait list at Cerritos College, which was physical therapy assistant school, actually. I didn't get in there, so I just searched the bachelor degree jobs, and that's how I found myself in a loan officer position, because I've always wanted to kind of get out of that kind of debt situation. I wanted to, have some money and not have to worry and stress about money. And I thought that real estate was the way to go. I did some kind of I did some research in college about, about real estate, about investing, and I just wanted to kind of I dipped my toes in that. And so I just did a sales position with a mortgage job. And man, was that the best experience or best thing that I could have ever done, because what that job is what I'm still doing right now is that I take applications for refinances and purchases. So I take a look at people's credits every single day. I look at their income scenarios, and I help them get approved for refinance or purchasing a home. And over those couple of years, it was a really good time in the market, and I did pretty well. And I ended up saving and purchasing my first home 2 years after that. And for me, it was just a really big accomplishment coming from where I came from in that garage and from the family. So I just thought that, how can I tell other people? How can I help others? Because I just felt, you kind of feel guilty sometimes for having that kind of success, and you see others that are struggling too, but that they have the full potential in doing it. So that's kind of how I got into the nonprofit work too, just trying to give back and give knowledge, and starting the podcast too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of a long-winded
Oh, actually,
thing,
I
but
want to
that's everything.
No, it's not everything, because I definitely want to unpack some stuff. But at the same time, I definitely want to get into your nonprofit and the work that you're doing with the
Yeah.
podcast. But just to really start and unpack, right? As a college counselor, community college is one of those words where we're like, just be careful. And you are an example of a awesome success story there. And so thank you for sharing that story. But the one thing that you said is you did your research before, right? You went in there knowing there was an honors program
Oh
and
yeah.
a direct path to transfer. And a
Yeah.
lot of students don't do that, right? They go in thinking it's going to be the more affordable option at the end of the day when they get stuck. Right, there's impaction that takes place. You got to fight for classes, and if you're not in part of an
Oh
honors
yeah.
program or in a
Yeah. I can
support.
go. Yeah.
Am
Yeah.
I right? Right. There are
Yeah.
so many reasons why students get stuck at community colleges, but there are so many reasons why you can't, why you won't either. And there are so many people on those campuses that are there to support you, and students just aren't taking advantage of them. And so when I talk about community colleges with my students, the first thing I say is you have to go in with a plan. And
Yes.
whether it's you changing your major is one thing, because we all do it. You did it. I did it 3 times. We change what we're studying, we change our trajectories a lot. But as long as you know that there's a path and a process to get out of there, if not, we're talking students who are on an 8-year graduation track. And students only get financial aid for 4 years in the state of California. Well, public
Yeah.
funding, really. So if you don't know those things, and you're at a community college and you get stuck, all of your money is going towards that community college, and it won't be there when you're ready for that transfer, right?
Yeah.
So I
Let me
want
add, I can add something on that too, right? So just for tips, right, for these high school
yeah,
kids or people that are in college, right? So I I was very much motivated to get out of this situation that I was in, right? I think it all starts there. So, and I also at the same time too, because I didn't really have the knowledge behind what college is, and I didn't really have people kind of explaining any of this to me. I had a very open mind and wanted to learn as much as possible. So that's what I would say, like learn as much, and the way to do that is you just go to those you go to the different offices. I did summer school there. I went to go talk to like every single counselor that I can talk to. And one thing too is that a lot of people get disheartened with like the first conversation that they'll have with a professor or counselor. Like it
yeah,
doesn't have to end there. You just talk to someone else and they have a totally different perspective of everything, right? And so what I learned was like, okay, how do I navigate community college to the best? Like how do I like learn the system, right? And it's all about getting priority classes. So getting priority classes, being full time, being in a kind of a supportive system, which was that honors program. So they made us meet for meetings. And when you have some kind of group or community that's kind of doing the same thing, it leads you to other opportunities. Like I went to speak at UCI. I did like some events there and several different internships and job shadowing events, all because they sent it to these to that club or program. So I would say find out what your interests are, get into a club or program if you're going to go the community college route. Because I can tell too that I didn't know. I guess I was naive to the fact that you can go in there and get lost in community college. I can kind of see that,
yeah.
but because I treated it like it was uh like a job almost, like I just needed to stick around there, be in the library, be in the tutoring, that I was able to get out, pretty quickly and get all my stuff done. But yeah, I can definitely see it. Like you gotta have the right mindset definitely to go to community college.
It's all about the mindset. I mean, we talked about being your net worth earlier, and it's the same conversation when I'm talking to Cal students who are off to a Cal State and off to a UC. Strange enough, my students who are at a UC have sometimes the hardest experiences, because I like to call it the red tape, Kenny. I say they'll walk into an office and there's that mean person or that person they don't feel like help them, them, and they're just like, Miss, I'm gonna drop out. This place doesn't, this is not here for me, right? And you said it, just go to somebody else. And that's going to happen all the time because there is somebody in that office that cares. But I think for students who are first gen, and like you said, you didn't have anybody sort of guiding you, when they don't, to them, a barrier and a red tape is enough for them to say, I'm out, right? This is enough for me. This is too overwhelming for me. So you actually had experience in this, and you mentioned also previously the scarcity mindset. So let's bring it back to the financial piece, because
Yeah.
I had never really heard that term before. Can you share with the audience what that means and why it's significant in your life?
Oh man, scarcity mindset. This is, yeah, when I first heard of this term, it really like, whoa, put a like a it put a sticker on what I've been feeling like growing up and not knowing, right? And so scarcity mindset, just think of it like as if you can't really see outside of the parameters that you're in right now. You kind of set limits on yourself that, you know, of what your income's going to be, of what what you're going to be in life. So it's not being abundant where, you know, actually things can turn out better than you anticipate, you know, if you just are open to it. But if you have a scarcity mindset, you're going to be constantly closed off to those new opportunities just because you're sticking to that same kind of story or frame of mind that you're always thinking. So when you're growing up in a situation where you have a lot of debt, and like in that case, you're not looking past the part of, you know, getting it paid off, of what it feels like to actually be debt free and to be investing and to have not have to worry about money. Some people can't even conceptualize that concept. And sadly, you know, a lot of my family and where I grew up, a lot of my life living that way, you know, until I got into my loan officer position, and I see people making way more money, and I'm talking to people who have, you know, multiple homes, and it just made it a little bit more obtainable, you know, that there's actually, oh wow, there is, if these people could do it, you know, why can't I? And when you start switching that mindset of, oh man, maybe, you know, this can happen to me too, stuff just starts happening in your life, you know. You when you become open and you are uh yeah, when you're just open and you're not living the same story that you're constantly living,
Yeah.
that's when you can really truly be more happier and live with more abundance. So that's kind of a long a long
Oh,
definition of
yeah.
that.
And I think it's associated, again, it's sort of the opposite of like generational poverty, right? Where you're just in this cycle of cycles where you're not getting the education, you're, continuing to work at, what's
Yeah,
less than, right? There's something in the college access world, a term that we call undermatching. Have you heard of that term before?
never heard
Undermatching?
of it.
No? So
Mm-mm.
undermatching basically means that, you qualify for something more. So in the college world, you qualify, you worked really hard with your grades and your academics and your activities to qualify for an excellent school, yet you don't know you don't know the options that are out there. So instead you sort of set yourself short, you sell yourself too low, and instead you go to a place, or you opt into a place where where maybe, you qualify for it, but it's not the best fit for you, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So in undermatching, it happens all the time where it's like you have worked so hard to get here. And I think it's a similar in financial literacy, right? You worked so hard to work, go to school, get those grades. Now it's up to you, student, person, adult, whoever it is, to take that next step, right? To make something different for you and your family. But it's not always easy.
Yeah. No, definitely not. It's kind of, you kind of have to be a little delusional almost because it's not what you normally see in your everyday life. You kind of have to put yourself in an uncomfortable position of, you know, evaluate what you really want in your either your school, your career, your money situation, and take steps, just take little steps to go towards that, right? And for me it was getting out of the environment, moving out of my house and going to live in an apartment, going to working in Orange County and just seeing that. I lived in Newport for a year, which also helped, you know. And it's not just this thing that like a light bulb that switches, you know. You grew up with what you grew up with, right? So you know, like there's times where I resort back to that scarcity mindset too. It's very normal, you know, but it's just about, you know, always trying to get there, always being able to recognize that that's, you know, something that you could be falling into. And I could definitely see that undermatching thing. Like why did I have to only resort myself to the Cal States, you know? Like I didn't plan to think about, you know, oh, maybe I can get into an Ivy. I never really even looked at it because I can't conceptualize that, right? I can't, like, that's not me, you know? I can't go to UCLA or go to Ivy League. Like, that's the kind of scarcity mindset. Like, why do we put those limits on ourselves when we don't know, right?
Exactly. Why do we put those limits on ourselves? And also what's so strange, and I think if only students knew, I think sometimes the price tag scares students a lot, right? When you're talking about a 90,000, which is crazy to me that to think that back then when we
Yeah.
were going to school, it wasn't even around that. Now it's about $90,000 to go to school. But then like I said, if you really put into perspective, you said you did your calculations, you sat down and looked at your best options. Really, the financial aid is there at some of these
Yeah.
colleges. Just, and you mentioned it, and I will emphasize having an open mind, you know?
Yes. Yeah. I think as it starts there, right? With being open to that school, and then the how comes afterwards, right? But if you always close yourself off with like, oh no, it's too expensive, you won't even apply, you won't even see it, you won't even try. But if you go and have that conversation with, say, a counselor or someone in financial aid, like, hey, like, I have this dream of going here, like, how can I make this happen? And then, maybe there's something that you didn't think of, or another avenue that that you didn't see before.
And I'm all about no regrets, like the last thing you want to do is 5 years from now say, I could have, should have, would have, and I should have tried to apply there. Who knows, right? But
Yeah.
you also said, you sort of talked about the people in your life who mentored you. Or I know I heard that in your podcast.
Yeah.
And that means it makes a difference, right? When somebody in your life is telling you, like, you can do this, you should do that. I think that's what you're trying to exude in your podcast. Am I right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I naturally have this always thing of just whatever I learn, I would just want to teach it. Like
For the wealth.
I,
Yeah.
I'm not. I hate the gatekeeping mentality that people have and not wanting to give knowledge, or because like I said, if you're living in abundance, if I have success, why can't other people have success too, right? And it's the same. I think it's growing up with having two younger brothers, of just like everything that I learn, I want to just pour it onto them. Like, hey, look, do it this way. You could do this a lot better. So that's why I'm kind of really an open book with, in my situation, just if it can help someone get to their own position, because it's not, it's easier than they think. It's not, of course, it's not easy, to get out of the situation that you're living in. But if you see that there's someone else kind of in the same spot, and I can help at least kind of show a light to that, then, why am I preventing myself just because, of this gatekeeping mentality? So yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I just
Solid.
want, I want the success for everybody.
Yeah, and it's also like you mention a lot, and I say it to my students, the growth mindset, right? It's not
Yeah.
about seeing it as obstacle, it's about seeing it as a stepping stone, or these obstacles as stepping stones instead. And then you also sort of made me think about it's not just college related, right? I think there are certain skills that people need in order to be financially stable. And I'll speak as an adult, right? I think there are still things I'm learning. Even when I went to college, I wish I wouldn't have signed the dotted line to my
Yeah.
school for all the loans, right? I didn't know that there was an appeal process, or I could fight for more financial aid, or there were other scholarships possible that I could apply to. I didn't know all of that stuff. But I say, and one thing I notice with my students when we talk financial literacy, sometimes it goes in one ear and out the other, unless they're living it in real time. Like, I get the calls when they're like, Miss, I'm trying to open a credit card and I'm like, what is this telling me? When they're in real time. So what is some
Oh,
advice
that's a
that
good, yeah.
you know what I mean? It's
Yes.
what would
So,
you
okay.
say? Yeah.
So, man, I can go on and on about this. So again, it's another mindset, right? Common thing that students do in college is, it doesn't exist right now. These numbers, what's 20,000, what's 60,000, what's 100,000 in student loans? Like, I don't know what that is. Like, you don't conceptualize it, so it's just like, just throw it in the loans. We'll worry about it later. Type of mentality that a lot of people have. But now, telling you from the other side of it now, of being a loan officer, I'd say like one out of every three applicants that I see is just these outrageous numbers of student loans that are put on there. And which isn't, student loans aren't bad. I think they get such a bad rap, right? But if you get,
We'll go into this.
if
Yeah.
you have if it's going to allow you to get a good career and be in a better position than you were, you got to do what you got to do. But you just got to be, I think more people have to just acknowledge of, just try to learn of what their terms are for their loans and what potential harm that it can do later on down the line when they're applying for, say, a mortgage, right? So I think it starts with the mindset of it, of not just thinking that, it'll get somehow paid down later. Actually having maybe a plan, and then maybe this is some a conversation you need to have with your someone in the financial aid office of, what's the difference between a subsidized and unsubsidized. Just being familiar and starting to learn what these terms are. How can I get on an income based repayment plan when I graduate?
Mhm.
There, and and it's a lot of it, like a lot of people just put it off. They don't get. Sometimes you just need to make the call, to your counselor, to your financial aid office, to find out what your situation is, and because it can have drastic effects later on, right? If you have $200,000 worth of student loans, even though you have a great career, what lenders and what loan officers look at when you're applying for a home is, we look at your debt to income ratio. So we look at how much debt that you have, and we measure it to how much income that you're bringing in. So, maybe it might not make sense to go to a private college if you're not going to get any kind of aid to it. If you're going to get a degree that's not going to give you a high paying job to make those student loans fruitful for you, right? Maybe might as well go to a lower cost Cal State, or go to community college first. If you're going to have that's kind of how I looked at it. Maybe you
Yeah.
have more insight behind it. But I saw it as, if I'm going to get a kinesiology degree, why am I going to go to a private and pay 60,000, whatever for a year, when I can go to a Cal State and pay, 10 to 12,000.
Yeah.
And that's kind of
I'll
the
sort of
mindset.
say, I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to jump in there
Yeah.
because I think there's also the misconception that a public institution is cheaper than the privates. The awesome part about privates is, and I could go on for the days for
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
but is that they have larger endowments and a lot more private funding. So specifically for first gen, maybe low income students, you're talking almost full ride scholarships sometimes, right? And
Oh, yeah.
you don't know that unless
Yeah.
you apply and you test it. And we see it across the board with the students I work with who are predominantly first generation and low
Yeah.
income, and it's the private colleges. Now they may not be the ones you've heard of, right? The all of the Ivy Leagues are great with financial aid, but all of the big names, they might be smaller schools like the Swarthmores and Barnards and Smiths of the world,
Yeah.
but man, they come with the dough. And it's because they want to see their students succeed. They have the support systems there and they've got the endowments. So
Oh,
but
yeah.
I'm
Well,
100% there, Kenny. I think, yeah, you
that's the key
gotta
though. I was
know.
going to say, like, it's about, go through the process, see what all of the aid that you can get, and then from there on, like, okay, now, the tuition was, I don't know, 70,000, but we got it down to 5. Like, is that still, at the end of the day, I'm a numbers person, so I'm going to compare that against, your Cal State, of how much that's going to be. So after all of the costs, that's how I would say, like, just look at it, but never limit yourself, right? Go through that whole process with, and I didn't know that about the privates, and I wish I would have done a little bit more homework myself when doing it, because I just had blocked that all out and just thought that they were too expensive. So I had that.
Yeah. And earlier you mentioned the loans, and you just made me remind me about the, just I think it's a fear, right? Taking out money and borrowing money. But if there's a $3,000 gap at one of the top 10 colleges in the
Oh,
nation,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That scares students sometimes. And for us, or at least for me, when I counsel students, I'm saying, there is a $3,500 subsidized loan with your name on it. If that is going to hold you back from one of the top 25 schools in the nation, take out that loan. It's an
Yeah.
investment in your education. It's something that's going to appreciate over time, right?
Yeah.
It's going to add value
You're,
because
you're gonna get a return on that. Yeah.
exactly, and but I think for our families, for families that we work with, it's a very expensive to think about $4,000 for them. Um,
Yeah, it's because they don't know understand. We don't understand what that is. What's the value of that? What is the extra connections that I'm gonna make in the kind of programs, the opportunities that I'm gonna get when I get into that school. And it's so hard to get that knowledge across sometimes. but it really starts with just having the conversation of like what you're, what you kind of want, and hopefully a good guidance counselor can lead you down that road of like, yeah, like sure it's $3,000, but there are these programs where you're gonna make the money twice as much later on down the line. Like it's
Yeah.
just so hard for students and kids to understand that they need to maybe seeing some and that's exactly why we're doing the podcast, right? Bringing others that have had experience in that route to kind of shed light on that it is possible.
Right. And one thing that I also want to bring it back to is in terms of your story was sort of, and thinking about keeping an open mind is you had an experience, I think it was at Fullerton, where I'm all about opening up as many doors as possible and then walking through the one that makes sense at the end of the day. That's sort of what I tell my students all the time. But you came across an opportunity, I think, to study abroad at some point.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
how did that impact you? Because, coming again from that scarcity mindset, you almost held yourself back from one of the most important experiences of your life.
Man. Yeah, so I another thing, yeah. So I was a very much on that person. I was on the end of the spectrum of like very finance budget oriented. I do not want to waste money on stuff. Like I'm trying to pay down my car loans, my student loans, and so I saw the study abroad trip and it kind of like, oh, like that would be cool. And but I, kind of just like shoved that to the side. Like I can't do that. Like I'm almost gonna graduate. But just something about it, I'm like, man, like I've never been on an airplane before. Like I just kind of, this is something I need to just go to the meeting. So I went to the meeting and I learned that there was like a scholarship opportunity. Of course, these things always come up if you go and see it, right? Go to the meetings. So you go, I learned about that and I'm like, okay, well, if I get the scholarship, then, maybe I'll think about it. So I went home, I wrote the essay, and then yeah, I ended up getting like I think there was two or three scholarships that were given out, and I was one of the recipients of it. So now it made sense, and I asked my mom. I told my mom like, hey, look, I'm getting like a portion of it paid off. Like, is there anything else that we can do, like to help pay for it? Should I take out a student loan? Like, what do I do? And she's like, you know what? Let's just try making a GoFundMe. So my mom made a GoFundMe and just put it on Facebook, and that covered like pretty much the whole trip. And then I think I ended up taking out a student loan for like the extra expenses, but we made it work, right?
Mm.
I don't want to get into the particulars of it, but anyways, we made it work, and I went and experienced my trip. My
Greece,
gosh,
right?
like
Where did you go? Italy?
so it was for so I Cal State Fullerton. I studied kinesiology, and this
Oh,
was for a the Olympics. So we studied the ancient Olympics in Greece. So it was in Greece. We ventured all around Greece, looking at all of the old Olympic sites, all of the ruins, and what do you know there too? Not only did I go on the trip and have an amazing time at a different country, but I met my now fiance there on that trip 6 years ago. So
wow.
isn't that crazy? Like a couple $1,000s of a student loans, and now I have like I meet the love of my life, and we're getting married next February, and so it's like, had I just like listened to that scarcity mindset and not applied or not gone to the meeting, then I don't know. You don't know where your life would be, if you don't take that meeting, you don't talk to that one person. So you're literally one opportunity away from your life being completely different. Is kind of my
Yes, I
mindset,
like that. Yeah.
and so yeah, that's just one of the things. We just made it work, out of something that I didn't know would be possible. Just take the first step is what I would say.
I like that you said, you weren't afraid to ask for help, or at least your mom sort of pushed that on you, right? I mean, look, back in my day when I studied abroad, it was actually a similar experience. I needed to raise, gosh, I can't remember how much I needed to raise to help make my trip to Costa Rica happen. I went to go do research there. And my mom gave me the idea of just cold calling. Back then I actually wrote letters
That's
and sent
funny.
them to my family members, and was
Yeah.
like, I'm doing this project. We didn't have GoFundMe back in the day. But now, oh my gosh, students do. And I think one of the biggest things that holds students back, especially first gen students, is they're afraid to ask for help. We're
Oh
afraid
my
to ask the
gosh.
people in their life for that little loan, that support, and again, I always say, nobody wants to see you fail. And so what do you think about that? I think it's just a big,
Well, let them say. I think a big thing that a lot of us do, and that's not just with students, but like, let them tell you no. Like, what's the big deal? Let Go apply at Harvard, UCLA. Let them tell you no. Like, don't tell yourself no. You got to give yourself the best shot to get it first. Like, so I always think that because I do sales now, so I get scared of like making phone calls and reaching out. I'm like, I don't know. Even though I do this hundreds, thousands of times, I still have that like fear of like rejection, right? But it's like, what's the worst that's gonna happen? That you're in the same spot that you are in now. You know, might as well ask for help. Who cares if you look stupid? I thought I looked dumb on the GoFundMe, but like, hey, look, if I got a fiance out of it, we got a future wife. Like,
You're right, a
what
life-changing
what
experience.
is yeah, what's that gonna do, you know? So like we put these crazy stories in our head again that don't make any sense when, you know, let them tell you no.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. I actually had a roundtable with my students, over 50 students last year, and I asked them, what is one thing that you're afraid of in terms of the college applications? Nine times out of 10, they said, I'm afraid that I'm going to get rejected. That's what I'm afraid of. And so when I respond to students about that, I said, look, it's life. You're going to get rejected somewhere. You've got to hear a lot of no's before you hear a yes. Right. And the other day, I also heard this quote, which I really love. I'm taking with me. But he said, it's not about winning and losing, it's about winning and learning. There's always going to
Yeah.
be the learn, not the lose. Right. And so you're going to
Yeah.
lose regardless. You're going to, what they say, fail, right? Use the fail forward. But regardless of what it is, it's about learning from that loss, and I thought that was so powerful. So, you know what?
Oh
You're
yeah.
going to hear some no's, my friends. It's going to happen in work, whether it's college and whether it's that loan for that house, and you just got to go for it.
You got yeah, let them tell you, because like if you're gonna tell yourself no, you're gonna always lose and before the game even starts. Like
Yes.
give yourself just a chance to succeed, you know? Like sometimes we need that. And sometimes you need someone beside you, you need family or friends to give you that push too of like just close your eyes and do it. Just apply, just go to that meeting. Like sometimes you need that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in the last few minutes that we have, I want to give you an opportunity to share more about your nonprofit because I think it's powerful, and I think folks in LA need to know about it. Again, had I not met you through your mom, I would have never known about it myself. And then, if I'd love to also hear a little bit more about your podcast, what you're trying to do, and then we'll go from
Yeah, of
there.
course. So again, I think my whole goal in life, and this isn't just with like work or, you know, with the nonprofit or anything, but just in life, is that I want to be able to help in any way, give opportunity to those who don't have it, or at least give them a kind of a path where they can get out of that position, right? Whether that's in finances, whether that's just with a, you know, I love coaching as well. That's why I liked physical therapy. It's just like that's just a natural thing that I have in me. Um, and that kind of led me to doing that kind of outreach with the nonprofit, right? So yeah, I again, a funny story of how I got associated with this nonprofit. I was on Facebook and I just seen one of my old friends from middle school. She was, you know, posting about that she was going to help the community, and they had won all these. She had won some awards from the city. I forget what it was, but I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Of like someone's actually going to LA and like not complaining about the homeless problems and like just going out there and like trying to help. And I'm like, I just thought like, wow, there's, you know, all we hear about in the media and the news is that, you know, all we do is like, you know, trash each other and there's so many polarizing views with politics. Like no one's actually like trying to make some change. And so I just reached out to her and, you know, I went to some volunteering events. I never had done any kind of volunteering before. And she's like, yeah, just come. And I went and I did like a housing workshop for low income apartment tenants, just teaching them the basics of credit, teaching them how to budget, and what the process is to get out of, they were actually in temporary housing. So they were trying to get like a regular type of apartment type lease. So we're teaching them how to be a good tenant, how to what the steps are with the applications, things like that. And I it felt so good, you know, just giving back. And so it was kind of addicting helping, you know. And so I continue to help out here and there. And then yeah, I ended up working for the nonprofit. It's called Kaimore, by the way. So Kaimore is a nonprofit that's uh, focused on giving financial literacy education. Um, and this has to do with investments. We also help with we do free taxes,
Mhm.
free tax preparation services, um, and yeah, just tons of workshop with anything that's kind of related with money. but yeah, so I just reached out to her and began working with it, and yeah, we had that big event of that VITA tax program. So again, really eye-opening for me, and it helped a ton of people with this past tax season where a lot of people didn't know about those stimulus checks that they didn't receive back in 2020 or 2021, especially the lower income and the homeless communities out there too. So a lot of them, we just helped them apply for their taxes, and they were able to get money back from it. So there's countless of people that just saw, thousands of dollars, just coming in from their stimulus check that they didn't get. So yeah, that's kind of the work that we're doing with Kaimore. We have workshops every so often to just free education. We had a home buyer workshop of what the steps are with purchasing your first home. Getting your credit set up, what kind of income documents that lenders look at, how much you need to save for down payment, things like that.
Mhm.
Um, so you can just follow Kaimore on Instagram, and go to the website kaimore.com, or I think it's Kaimore Group or Kaimore. I have to double check that, but yeah, to look at the events. And it's a lot of it's free to like low cost workshops. I think $25 is like the most that we charge for like a workshop. So yeah,
Fabulous.
the info's out there, and we get like um people who are veterans in their field. Like we've had business owners come and talk about how to set up how to budget their profit and losses, and
Wow.
just different things that we don't the we don't really have access to, or that's kind of hard to get. That's kind of what we try to bring. We try to bridge that gap to the lower income communities in the underserved areas in LA, is what that is.
Well, I'll definitely put the email address or the website in the caption. Make sure folks know about it. But one way that I think would be a really great way to end, because we're running out of time here, but is the title of the podcast was,
Oh
how
yeah.
to, you know at any age, right, from elementary to middle school, because we talked a lot about the generational wealth and generational poverty, right? So when you're a young kid and you have this mindset, it grows into your adulthood mindset. So do you have any advice? What can folks be doing at any age to make sure that they are financially literate right now, and just in a good place?
I would say it depends on the different situations, right? With what age that you are. But I'd say the basic kind of fundamentals that it's not very hard. Finances shouldn't be that hard. You got to think of it kind of like your health, right? So it's something that you have to check in with every single month. You've got to, and it's not going to be a perfect thing every single time, just like your health. We're not always going to eat perfect all the time. But the key is that uh you want to have an emergency savings account, 3 to 6 months if you can. So that's the goal. You want to pay off, any kind of credit card debt. Again, that's the goal. But that first starts off with, I'd say, let me just keep it simple. Track what you do.
Mm,
When I was in college and I worked my server job, I would write down the tips that I made that day, and I would make a percentage of how much that I would put into my savings account,
wow.
whether it was $20, $30, just to get you in the habit of saving, of living less than what you make. That's really the key thing, is you want to live under your means. So if I had made, say, $100 in tips that night, I would, no matter what, I was going to save 25%. Every single time I'd put $25 away, and and experiment with yourself. You'll learn, you can I put that number at 25%, and that worked for me. And because I learned that I was trying to be too aggressive sometimes, and I would save half of my paychecks, but I would end up,
Mm,
dipping into my savings all the time. And again, and I kind of learned what my number was at that time. So I think what everyone can do is open up those bank statements, and look at what your income of what you're bringing in. This is something that I continue to do, that everyone should just do, on a monthly, daily basis, is just see what you're spending, see where you can cut some corners on cost. Maybe it's subscriptions, maybe it's something, how can you just budget for a little bit less, just to aim towards paying down debt, putting some money into savings. But I think it really starts with the habit. Maybe for every $4 that you make, you put one in your savings account, and it kind of starts there. Once you get the momentum of having some savings, you start paying off your debt. Then the next thing in your head is going to be, oh, what can I do with my money? That's when you get into investing. You can start putting it into index funds. then going into real estate, which is my favorite investment in real estate. Maybe we could talk another podcast about that, but it
Right.
all starts with just looking at your current situation, seeing where you can make some changes in your budget, and making the habit of living under what you make. That's really the keys.
Yeah, I so wish I would have known all of that. And again, credit to my parents because they really taught me the hard work piece. But if only they would have said, "All right, I'm taking a portion of that when I was 15, I'm putting into a savings account for you." Sometimes I say, "Man, if only I would have put away that $20, I would be a millionaire right now in
Yeah.
investing it." Because I've just been working my whole life, and I wish I would have known these things then. And then even younger, I would just say this because I used to be an elementary school teacher, but I say this because money you can teach at any age is teaching little ones that the difference between needs and wants really is what
Mhm.
what it is, and just understanding like what is something that you absolutely 100% need in your life and what is a want, what is something that would be nice, luxury, but also understanding to your point of scarcity mindset, not always holding them back from some of those wants, giving them a little bit of ice cream every once in a while or taking them to a concert and sort of living, having some
Yeah.
fun along the way so that they don't sort of ingrain in them that it's not possible, right?
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I mean, because there's a lot of, just like with fitness, right? There's a lot of different ways how you can do it. Some people, they say cut out all the Starbucks and all that. Like, sometimes you don't need to do that though. Like, what do you value in your life? Like, if you don't really value clothes, if you don't really value cars, then like you don't need to listen to to society and purchase a nicer car or clothes just because they like it. What do you truly like? Put the money into the things that you truly like, and you won't be like feeling like you're not using your money towards the things that your true values. So that's what I would say too, is that find your own kind of method, but the key is to live under your means. So find whatever percentage that you can. I'd say maybe make it a goal to make it a quarter of whatever you make, is to put away into savings, to have an emergency savings account, pay off high interest debt.
Yes. Amen to all of that. And I feel like we could probably go to two more podcasts at this point because a lot of,
Oh yeah.
to be very honest, Kenny, to be very honest with you, your story is super similar to mine in terms of how I came into college access. Was the volunteering piece, loving it and getting excited, and then just jumping in a nonprofit. So nonprofit really lures you in. You really see the impact, that you're making in this world.
Yeah.
So I just can't thank you enough. I know we do have an audience member, so if you have any questions, feel free to do that. In the meantime, I also just want to give a shout out to your podcast, the More Than the Numbers podcast, which you started this year, I believe, right?
Yeah, earlier this year.
So lots of awesome, just solo conversations, but interviews of folks who can be examples, right? To
Yeah.
people, all sorts of people who have, right? Maybe you want to share more actually.
Yeah.
Share
So
with
I
us.
mean, success is because I wanted to do something on just showing the different paths of how people can kind of get out of that situation, of that there's different ways to go about it, right? So I interviewed someone who is a photographer, and he ended up doing a photography for a really famous rapper, hip hop artist, and he kind of gave his kind of steps with how he navigated out of getting into working his 9 to 5 job, and doing the entrepreneurial route. I had another one on of going into being a real estate agent. I've had insurance, like it just showing these different kind of career paths, and showing, I think just showing their, just helping them elevate their own stories, will just leave other people kind of inspired for, oh, maybe I can grab one or two things from what they did and apply it to my life, and I didn't know, and allowing them to see that something else is possible, of maybe that they didn't know. So that's kind of the key behind that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I definitely look forward to tuning in more. I hope folks who are tuning in today, just really think twice about your finances and know that, well, two things. A, you belong in these spaces. You can do this, right? Don't let anybody tell you that you cannot do these things. And two, it's sort of just starting early, right? Taking the little nuggets and creating the habits that are going to make, put you into better places. Well, thank you so much, Kenny, for taking so much of your time today. But again, I think that there's probably so much more to be said in this
Oh,
world.
there
So,
is. Yeah, we're just scratching the surface, man. I'm like, dang it, I wanted to go way deeper into all these things, but yeah.
hey, but both of us are learning from each other. And I'd love for more students to know some of these things as they're navigating the process. So let's definitely reconnect at some point.
Oh yeah, let's do it. I'm all for it. We can help make a difference, and I'm all for it.
Sounds good. All right, Kenny, thank you so much for joining us. We will, and thank you for folks who are tuning in. Again, this is the Inspired Conversations podcast, where we share just inspirational stories of folks who are trying to make a difference for college students and beyond. So we thank you for your time today, and we'll be in touch. Thank you for tuning in to this Inspired Conversation, where I interviewed a change maker in higher education. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and rate the podcast. If you do, you'll get an update once a new powerful story is posted. And more importantly, you'll help spread the word about some of the advice and tips we've given to students. For a list of resources shared in today's episode, read the description attached. One of my favorite things about this interactive podcast is that it's recorded live. So if you have questions for our guest presenters, you can tune in as well. For a list of upcoming live podcasts, follow Inspired Conversations Pod on Instagram and click the link in my bio. If you are tuning in today and have questions about college applications, college success, or financial aid, email me at counselorcova@gmail.com. Again, that's counselorcova@gmail.com. Know that you're not alone. I've been a college access and success counselor for many years, and I got your back. Remember, your success is your community's success, and you got this. I'll see you next time.